At this point, we're going to open up the floor for a few questions. The first question that we have is, could you talk a little bit about Confer's detection capabilities? Like, how does Confer detect some of the attacks that Paul just demonstrated, and how can Confer help?
Cool, I'll take that one, Paul. So basically, I mentioned before, right, there's only one kind of religion at Confer, and that's lightweight, non-disruptive, easy to use. When it comes to detection, there's really kind of multiple approaches that we take. We're inherently a big data platform. We are correlating multiple inputs to identify threats within the organization, and we actually think that it's the combination of multiple techniques that really, sort of take us way beyond what you're getting out of a lot of other systems. One of the things you tend to see a lot with sort of new companies and new approaches is they tend to very much get focused on a single way of detecting something, and a lot of times that becomes, it works when it works, and then of course when it doesn't, it completely misses something. Specifically, right, to get really specific, we're doing, we're using signatures, we're using static analysis, we're using a fair bit of, sort of more intel-based kind of, IP reputation, DNS reputation, and so on and so forth, right? So we use a lot of the kind of traditional, sort of static signature, intel, blacklist kind of based approaches. There's a heavy whitelisting component in the product as well. We do, import a 5 or 6 billion entry whitelist into the product. We use that to help evaluate and make sure that, when we are indicting something, we're indicting it correctly. That helps in, obviously, detection, but also, very much on the, reduction of false positive sides of things as well. One of the things that really sets the company apart, though, is really our behavioral detection capabilities. We're doing dynamic behavioral analysis of the applications themselves. And in particular, we're looking at basically what every process on the machine is doing. Because of that, right, that you may get to 20 or 30% kind of detection rates with traditional signature-based approaches. When you start combining signature with intel-based approaches and so forth, you may get up into the 60 or 70% range. But the thing that really puts us over the top is this sort of behavioral, dynamic behavioral analysis that we do. One of the really neat things about that, though, is it very much maps to kind of the direction that the attack, sort of the threats are headed. In the last sort of 12 months, an awful lot of the more interesting attacks haven't even involved malware, right? They've been malwareless attacks. There's no on-disk artifact. People are taking over processes and layering attacks into running processes from command lines, and using things like process hollowing and code injection and so forth to really compromise the machine. And when that happens, an awful lot of security products these days just have nothing to say about it because they're so oriented around having an on-disk artifact and making a decision about whether this application can be trusted or not. Because Confer has this heavy kind of dynamic behavioral analysis stuff, and in particular because we're looking for the actual techniques that are being used in memory, we do a very, very good job with data-driven attacks, in-memory attacks, things with no on-disk artifact, and so forth.
So oftentimes detection alone isn't enough. What will Confer do to prevent the attack?
So obviously we can enforce policy on the system at multiple different levels and for multiple different reasons. The first is based on reputation. So it allows you to kind of deal with the low-hanging fruit. The signature or reputational-based detections of things like known malware or known hacker tools or those types of things. You could enforce a policy with Confer where those applications are terminated, or a standard anti-malware quarantine in place type function is employed. We also have the ability to disrupt network communications from a process. So that's really good in the areas of wanting to cut C2 or data exfiltration with slightly less heavy hand when it comes to the user impact. And that can extend all the way up to disrupting all communications on or off the box, aside from the Confer management traffic. Obviously, as Confer detects threats from the behavioral elements of the solution, we can start to develop reputations that are unique to the environment and then enforce similar policy across them. So there's obviously a wide capability and configuration for what you can do from a preventative perspective.
Will confer detect everything?
It's sort of a running joke that, if someone tells you that, if a vendor comes to you and says we detect 100% of attacks and we prevent 100% of attacks, you should run the other way. So the attackers are extremely sophisticated. Clearly these individuals are highly motivated, in many cases extremely well funded and well resourced. The techniques are evolving because of the advances that we are making in the security stack. So in a sense, winning in detection drives the behavior on the other side. That's why the incident response capabilities that we have in the product are so powerful. And the example that I showed was basically showed some examples of being able to go back in time prior to the incident and figure out what's going on in the device. Other situations that I talk about is you may have a detection off of another control, maybe a network IPS or some other control in the infrastructure does fire and gives you an indicator of interest, an IP address or a hash or a domain name, something like that. So all of the events that Confer is collecting are searchable, sortable throughout time, so you can investigate incidents that other controls are detecting, and you can also mine that data sort of with your own custom searches and thoughts about your environment to detect malicious behavior.
I saw that you have coverage for Windows, Mac, and Android. Do you have a plan to cover Linux and iOS?
So yes, yeah. I mean, I think the general philosophy of the company is to protect the applications and the operating systems that people are using. And on the iOS side, we have a iOS sensor actually already in the hands of customers. It'll be formally released shortly. And on the Linux side of the house, actually there's a real tremendous amount of demand in the marketplace for that right now. We're working with a lot of customers on that, and yes, that is coming a little bit later in the year. We do, related kind of question, we do support both the sort of workstation end user devices. We also very much support server platforms as well, and so typically when we're working with customers on the Linux side of the house, we're talking about server infrastructure, right? And so that's what a lot of that demand is. Today, we're doing a lot in terms of protecting servers on the Microsoft Windows operating systems as well. So we do support Windows Server editions going all the way back to Windows 2003. And so it's very common to use this both to protect the endpoints as well as the server infrastructure. And of course, we will be supporting the operating systems that people use to that end.
Does Confer have the ability to replace antivirus?
Yeah, so we get that question quite a lot, and I'll tell you, it's an interesting one. I mean, there's a lot going on with regards to AV, in terms of, not being real effective, and of course that really dovetails with, obviously compliance and things like that. There's, a fair amount of momentum there as well. I would say probably at this point, maybe 10% of our customers have shut off AV. I would say, a fair number of them, though, do have plans to shut off AV in the future as well. So that is definitely a trend in the marketplace. I wouldn't say we position directly against AV. I mean, as I said, it's more common than not that we're deployed coincident with AV, and I think that the company puts a tremendous amount of time and effort into making sure that we can be coexistent with AV and that we don't get in each other's way, and we do a tremendous amount of interop testing with all of the major, endpoint security platforms out there. That goes beyond AV as well. So we do pride ourselves on coexisting with kind of whatever you have in your environment, but as I said, it's not that unusual, and it's increasingly common for our customers to be shutting off AV.
Okay, so what's the overall vision for Confer?
Cool. Now, thanks, Holly. I'll just kind of finish up on that point. So, yeah, I mean, look, a lot of this is, we spent a fair bit of time down on sort of some of the tactical stuff, how we help you deal with, a lot of, real issues that we're facing in our organizations today. But, definitely appreciate the opportunity to kind of up-level it a little bit. So, what we're really trying to do is, let me take a step back. When we started the company, we were basically, really interested in kind of enabling what we call an active threat-based defense, right? So much of what we've done in security has been kind of reactive, whack-a-mole kind of approaches, particularly as you look out across kind of the broad market. You have sort of the security haves and the security have-nots, right? The security haves, they have large teams, they have lots of resources, and because of that, they've been able to take a very strategic approach to doing security, and I think they're getting very, very good at it. We have a lot of those guys as customers as well, but we're particularly interested in enabling, some smaller organizations, some, organizations that aren't necessarily, defense people and things along those lines, right, with 100-person or 200-person security teams. We want to be able to help them do, a more strategic approach to securing their organizations as well. And so to that end, talk about active threat-based defense, really getting much more visibility into what's going on in your organization from a security perspective, much better understanding of how you're being attacked, what people might be after, right? Who's attacking you, what kind of sort of threats you need to be sort of allocating your resources towards, and kind of at a high level, really enabling an approach to security that has only been available to kind of the largest sort of defense and financial services kind of organizations, enable guys that are a little bit more broad market to really be able to kind of, facilitate that type of an approach. And so, we think this is the best approach to do that. You get a tremendous amount of visibility on the endpoint. We give you a lot of visibility as to what's happening. We automate the process of pulling in intel and applying intel across the endpoints and so on and so forth. And we just think this is a more, practical, lightweight kind of approach to, doing a much better job of securing companies. That's how we think about it, Holly.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So that's all we have time for today for the questions. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you're interested in learning more about Confer, or if you want to see our solution in more detail, it would be great to hear from you. We also offer a full trial version of the solution. It's cloud-based and really easy to get started. We can actually set you up with an administrator account and get your first few sensors deployed in under 30 minutes. I hope you enjoyed today, and we look forward to hearing from you all soon.